Welcome to Living Your Greatness. Each episode, we bring on great people to inspire you to achieve your greatness. We discuss topics all related to health and wellness. Listen to world-class stories, learn valuable lessons, and turn knowledge into action. It is now time for you to unlock your inner greatness. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Living Your Greatness. This is your host, Ben Mummy, and today we have a new guest to the show, and his name is Jason Hillcoat. So for those of you that don't know Jason, he is a Canadian endurance sports athlete, and over the last 2 years, Jason has raised over $35,000 for the Montreal Children's Hospital. Jason has done this by challenging himself to endurance sporting events, such as Ironman competitions, the David Goggins 4x4 by 48 challenge, and his latest 48-hour swim. His goal is to keep raising money and awareness for a cause that means the world to him. So Jason, welcome to Living Your Greatness. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Ben. It's great to be part of the show and kind of express my story through this process. So I guess I could start off by telling yourself a little bit about me. I grew up in the West Island community in Dollar-des-Ormeaux, Quebec. I grew up at a summer pool called West Park. I started off my career into swimming, and then from competitive swimming, I went into competitive water polo and played all the way into my early 20s. And then just kind of felt like a feel for the water and had a passion for it my whole life. And I figured, this latest challenge was a great way of kind of expressing that.
That's awesome, Jason. And something that I actually want to mention here is I actually knew Jason through water polo. He actually was more around like my brother's kind of age group. And his brother, Zach, I had actually played with. So Jason and I actually go way back, and it's been really cool to see Jason's journey, from going from, a competitive athlete in a sport like water polo, but then later on in life, finding an activity that really lights him up, which it sounds like it's endurance sports. And now, expressing his passion and purpose, by doing it also for charity. So a question that I do have though, Jason, is I know there's a lot of time when any athlete is training for endurance sports, and I know you're a big family man. So what advice would you give any aspiring young fathers, to have a work-family life balance?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that, your biggest thing in work-life balance is kind of setting your time schedule appropriately. There's only so many hours in a day, and you're going to want to maximize that to your benefit. I generally get up between 4 and 4:30 in the morning. That way my day starts off till I get my workout in. I get everything done before 7 o'clock is usually when my 3 kids kind of get up, and then I can help with my wife with dealing with the kids before even school or daycare. And then by the time 9 o'clock rolls around, I'm available for work. Obviously work a full-time job right now, 9 to 5. So by the time that time finishes, again, it's family time. And then if I have time in the evenings or I haven't finished my completion, it's back to work, the drawing board from 8 to 10 to start working out again. So you have to maximize your time really and figure out what's best for you during those times. My time with the family is very important to me. So I don't like to take away when my kids are awake as much as possible. Obviously, there are days where I'm going to have to fluctuate and do it with them. And hopefully, if I am working out in my pain cave in my basement, they can come over there and kind of cheer me on and make a kind of a game out of it so that they can get involved and see how important it is to be focused on a task.
Absolutely. And I think your whole strategy or kind of mindset of kind of like you said, like time management is super key there. And, but it also takes discipline, right? To be able to do that in like the morning, waking up at 4:30 a.m. It definitely takes habit, routine, all that stuff. And just to comment on like the last part of kind of what you said, I've actually seen a couple of Instagram videos too of like Jason and his kids kind of working out, and it's definitely fun. And I think also for them too, you can tell they enjoy being part of it, and they also enjoy, seeing their dad, actually walking like the talk, right? So it's been pretty fun to see those here and there every now and then, anytime you do an update. So Jason, something that I want to move to, I really admire your loyalty, courage, and passion. That's actually one reason why I reached out to you, to bring you on the show. You've dedicated a lot of time, to not only exercising, but fundraising and kind of spreading awareness of the 48 hours, right? Like this whole concept, this fun, this thing that's really close to your heart. But before we dive deeper, could you share with my listeners what this fund is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of got the passion for fundraising, I would say about 2 years ago now. I got a passion because my cousin had lost her son at 10 days old to Hirschsprung's disease. My cousin and I were very close growing up. We were actually born on the exact same day. She's actually a year older than me, so I was kind of her birthday present at her 1 years old. So we actually grew up together at the same community pool. Our mothers are actually sisters, so we would spend a lot of the time together. We lived on the corner growing up, kind of hand in hand. And then another connection that happened is when her son, who passed away, was born actually the same day as my wife's birthday. So we kind of shared a double connection on that side. And I actually was flying out to work. I was traveling to work at the time. And so I was traveling, I flew out to Calgary, and he was born the morning of my wife's birthday. And then I was actually I was actually working for those 10 days away. So the entire time he was away, I was not able to be there during that process. And so by the time he passed was the day that I was flying back in. So a bit of that resonated with me, that, time is very limited on this earth. And, you want to be able to maximize your time efficiently and be like, hey, what's the purpose and what's the reasons behind this, which kind of inspired me into figuring out a way to fundraise and through this process.
Awesome, Jason. Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. I'm really just sorry to hear that, but I also love at the same time that this is creating an opportunity, for you to give back and kind of spread awareness, about something that, a lot of people need to know about, and also, to take that appreciation and, how do I say, support. This isn't like the only situation that's kind of out there, right? And to support other families and kind of give back. So I really admire that. Something that I want to go to, Jason, is I know through fundraising, you had 3 different challenges, right? If we were to start off with the first challenge, I know it was completing the famous David Goggins 4x4x48 challenge. So if anyone that's listening right now that doesn't really know this challenge, it actually consists of 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. I actually had a friend, I was telling Jason before this episode, who also completed it. And it's definitely not easy. From what I heard, it really tests both your mental and your physical ability, right? Just because, sometimes you're even waking up in like the middle of the night, right? To go run. So a question that I have for you, Jason, is what are the hard truths of doing this challenge? And do you have any stories that you would like to share with my listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is the challenge 1 of 3 that I kind of started. I actually, so I kind of talked a little bit. I actually ended up getting another challenge involved, and then I'll kind of break down the 4x4x48. So my company Expel was kind of inspired the fact that I kind of started this endeavor, and they took notice after the 4x4x48, and they actually flew me down 3 weeks later to do a bike race in Texas called on L'Etape de Tour de France. So the Tour de France has now a leg in all over the world where you can do a kind of mock 100-mile race of a Tour de France. And so they sponsored me to go down to there after figuring out what this 4x4x48, which ties into how much physical and mental capabilities they were like inspired by this story and me doing this stuff to fundraise. The 4x4x48 was quite difficult. I'm not a big runner, let's say, on that aspect of things. I mean, I do run, I guess, marathons for Ironman and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say it's my forte. And so I decided to take on this challenge because this whole year is based on 48 hours, which is why my 3 challenges are 4x4x48, the 48-hour swim, and then two Ironmans, which cover about a day each. It is to reflect on Spencer's 48 hours. The last 48 hours of his life was spent in the hospital fighting for his life, and the children's for those 48 hours were absolutely amazing, to help any way they could during his lifetime span. And with that, inspired this 48-hour challenge. And I saw Goggins' challenge, and I was like, this would be an interesting challenge for myself mentally and physically. And again, like, you're starting off this and all the excitement is in the air on this 4x48, right? You're 6.5 kilometers or 4 miles or whatever you want to call it. And you start running, and, the first one seems easy and the second one seems easier, and you still have that adrenaline. And then you realize quickly that, you started this late at night. So for people who don't really know, the 4x4x48 starts after work hours around 8 p.m. at night. So you spent a full day awake doing what you're supposed to be doing, working, being with your families, whatever it is. And then you're taking on a challenge where you're going to be very sleep deprived. That was something that, you underestimate. Where you're like, you got, 35, 40 minutes of running, and then you have about 3 hours and 20 minutes to relax. By the time your body comes down from the excitement and the adrenaline, I ended up getting about 4 hours during that 48 hours of sleep. And I would say that mile 40 to 44 was the hardest for me. I finally got about a 2 hour block of sleep. And I was just about hitting that mile mark where it's 40 miles. And I was like, you know what, this one, I'm going to probably try to walk it as much as possible, because you could do the challenge walking or running. It's just based on time. And my body was just so broken on my hips and joints, on my knees, that I started trying to walk, and it just was so painful that I just switched my mental capacity, said, you know what, you're running it, because at this point you're going to feel pain either way. You might as well try to get it over and done with as possible. And then the last one, it was just based on adrenaline, and I was able to run that the fastest out of all the 4x4x48s. So the last 4 miles was my fastest 4 miles, because I got an adrenaline boost and I spiked up. But from 40 to 44, it was a physically challenging and mentally, where you have to actually turn your brain to something positive to reflect the pain that you're feeling in your body.
Oh man, yeah, no, that definitely sounds like a lot of, how do I say, time commitment, but also even like it's literally every 4 hours, right? So once it starts, there's no going back, right? And it's crazy because Ashley didn't realize what time specifically it started at. So it's true too. Like even what you were saying, like you're in your normal routine, you've had this normal long day, and then boom, it's starting, boom, at 8 p.m. So that's crazy. But it was really interesting to hear about too. I think you did a good job at sharing, like your experience of both the physical, like on your joints and your hips and stuff like that. But at the same time too, it just shows that if you take one step at a time, you're able to get through it, or if you have to listen to your body to walk a bit, you could still get through it. So I applaud you on completing that. And also thanks for sharing with us too about that other challenge that you did, like the bike one, which I actually wasn't aware about. And then Jason, I know there was a second challenge, which you did on Canada Day, and it was swimming for 48 hours straight. And so I want to congratulate you, because you also completed the swimming record. I think it was 104 km, right? So that's also 64.5 miles in 48 hours. And something that I thought that was cool was kind of like I said, you did this on Canada Day. You also did this at your neighborhood pool, which is Westminster Pool. Were there ever any times where you were asking yourself while you were swimming, like, why am I doing this? Because like, I know when I've swam, it could get dull sometimes, right? Looking at a black line the whole time. What mental fitness tools did you use to motivate yourself to get through this long challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. Swimming back and forth on a black line for 48 hours definitely will do something to you mentally. But I would say that almost from minute one, my positive outlook kind of basically superseded it. Obviously, I had to stop to get a hydration here and there, but for the most part, I swam for just about the whole 48 hours. And during that time, my body went through a whole bunch of different, emotions and stuff like that. I'll kind of dive into. But mentally, I was in the positive, where every time I would stop, people would run over to make sure that I was okay mentally and physically. And I would always have the mindset where I was feeling like $1,000,000, right? This is like I just started, my muscles were sore. And during those 48 hours, I adapted to the mental capacity where, I'm just starting, just 1 hour, right? I would just swim one lap, to just get to the next lap, to the next lap, and the next lap. Yeah. And I swam 104 kilometers in that 48 hours in a 25-meter pool to set that record. But I think the main thing was going through a lot of the mental stages where, if I'd stopped to take a sip of water after about, 16 hours, it probably started, my muscles wanted to kind of relax. So it would take me about 10 minutes of constant motion just to kind of feel normal again in the water and get them kind of stretched out. And then by the once I hit 24 hours, my body was almost in a hypothermic state. So basically they would monitor me when I would stop to make sure my core temperature was, but my core temperature reflected 1 degree warmer than the water temperature. So I was fine when I was in the water, but when I went to get out, if I had to go to use the washroom or whatever, I was in a hypothermic state. So I had to shove heat blankets on top of me and towels around me just so that I would be able to regulate. Even though it was 31 degrees and sunny outside, my body was freezing during those last 24 hours. And then on top of that, there's so many unforeseen mental things. I didn't anticipate my left ankle going so early. So the impact of the wall movement basically left my left leg, and I couldn't basically use it after about 16 hours. So I was kicking only on my right side for as long as I could. And then with the impact on the walls back and forth from flip turning, my feet got cut up pretty big. And for the last 5 hours, my toes were bleeding every time I would hit the wall. So it was a lot of painful stuff. So again, I just had to switch my mental capacity by saying, you know what, like, you're here for a good time. You're here for the cause. You're here to help these children out who need this kind of help and benefit. And, you know, like I said, you know, I feel like great. I feel like $1 million. And that's what I just kept telling myself for 48 hours, even though once I hit that wall, at the end, my body was in a state of, you know, complete shock and hypothermia. So it was different.
I cannot imagine that, especially like you even said, hey, even those breaks to go to the washroom, right? Like there's so many components that could kick in to disrupt like your brain, right? And your thoughts and kind of change that attitude. But I think, you know, your mindset of always telling yourself that you feel like $1 million or you feel really good or everything's okay, right? Like it's that mentality that's like your first lap. That mindset is I think pretty key, you know, especially later on where it's just like, kind of like you said, like the physical game is getting so complex and so complicated and so challenging. Right. So again, I applaud you. I think you had a really good point there where like the whole reason why you were doing that, right, was really for charity, right? Like, okay, if the record came, that was cool, but really it was more, you know, to kind of give back. Right. So I find that fascinating. So Jason, something that I want to move to is I know you have a third challenge coming up. So, you know, you've done these two already insane challenges, but it's not over from here. So I know your next one, you must be pretty excited for it because you're doing, I think it's your second Ironman. You've done one before, but this year it'd be your first one this year, which is going to be in Mont Tremblant. So it's not your first rodeo anymore. Which is the more difficult aspect preparing for an Ironman, the physical or the mental?
Yeah, Ironman is a completely different beast than, you know, most of the other stuff that I've done, you know, over the last little bit, which is where I kind of started the fundraising through Ironman. It is like, if for people who don't know, it's I guess I'm going to say it in kilometers, but it's a 3.8 kilometer swim into a 180 kilometer bike into a 42.2 kilometer full marathon run at the end. You have to do that within a 17-hour period. So not only do you have a time ticking down on you mentally, which is obviously on the back of your mind at all times, but you have the physical feat of not only, you know, getting into one element, the water, into another on the bike, and then getting off the bike and deciding, hey, I'm going to go run a marathon right now. And so I think that mentally and physically, they're almost on par, right? Because the mental side is you got to get through, you know, all these transitions into different kind of sports. You have to follow your nutrition plan, because if your nutrition plan tends to fail during these events, and I've seen it when I've done my last one, people just start collapsing, right? Your body is generally not adapted. So you basically have to mentally know when to fuel, what to fuel at what times, even when you're feeling, hey, I'm completely okay with my body right now. And you're like, you know, I'll wait another 20 or 30 minutes. You're putting yourself 20 or 30 minutes behind. So it's a game of knowing when to nutrition mentally, and then physically being able to carry your body through these kind of 3 different disciplines, as well as, I would say, you know, your transition periods, right? So when you stop off if anybody knows, if they're doing any kind of physical activity, when you do a long swim, you stop, you're like, oh, I feel like I'm done. And then you're like, no, wait, now I got to go transition and bike. And then you bike for, you know, 112 miles or 180K. You're like, you know, it's a 6.5, 7 hour bike ride. You're like, hey, well, now my body's finished. And you're like, nope, now I got to go run a marathon. And I get this time ticking down on me saying, if I don't finish it, all this was then possibly for nothing in the back of your mind. So it's a different beast for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Like having three different physical activities, and especially kind of like you said, like the running aspect is probably, the one that's going to be the most challenging for you. Right. So you really do have to be versatile. Right. I think you made up a really good point too about nutrition and stuff. And probably also hydration, right? Drinking water. Because I feel like not every athlete maybe has that mindset of taking it serious, until they go through maybe, unfortunately, right, that kind of circumstance where they realize like, oh my God, I'm exhausted right now, or I can't move anymore. Right. So thanks for, sharing like that process of like the two aspects of the physical and the mental, and also a key point, to think about, especially if someone is preparing or they're about to go through it. So I appreciate that. This kind of moves me to my next question, because now that you've competed, in a variety of endurance sport challenges, what are the qualities that separate, a good endurance athlete from a great endurance athlete?
That's an excellent question. I would say that the main components that would separate it is your discipline and then your mental capability. Discipline in the sense where, you train, Ironman is one, or just in general, let's say I'm taking Ironman for an example, or any kind of endurance sport, is you train all these miles and kilometers if you're disciplined enough to get those miles in on all the training, and you've done the work, and then mentally you just have to put it all together on one day. And so that what separates them is, you felt the pain during your workouts and you felt the pain during the time. You then have to be able to put that mentally into the race. And a lot of people get overwhelmed during that process and say, hey, I just finished a crazy swim. Like the one I did originally was the first Ironman I did was in Florida, and it was ranked one of the hardest swims, not because it was an ocean swim, but because we didn't anticipate the amount of waves that were coming over and the wind during that morning. And so we had about 3,000 people registered for that race, and I believe 1,600 finished the entire race, and a lot of them couldn't get out of the swim. The current was swimming against you and the waves were crashing over. So if you couldn't mentally, physically breathe without breathing on your left-hand side, you were having a problem because that wave was crashing down on you every few seconds. So you were swallowing and taking in water. And just imagine 3,000 people trying to swim in one direction too, right? So people are on top of you and swimming. So the Coast Guard was out and grabbing people. So you have to be able to mentally say, you know what, I got to switch my plan, whether it be in the water or the bike. If you bust a tube, or even on the run, if something goes wrong, it's just exhaustion or mental. You have to be able to physically turn yourself on and say, I have trained for this, I've done it. What do I need to get back to that spot? Take 2 seconds, take your breaks mentally. And that would separate you from those endurance athletes where they're not going to choke when the elements come into play, or when your nutrition slowly failing you. I had that nutrition fail me actually 13 and a half hours into my swim, where I realized that my body rejected food and water pretty early on during my swim. And so I actually had to slow myself down and get my nutrition back in, to let my body continue, because it was just rejecting the sense that it didn't want any more food, but I knew that I physically had to eat, whether that means slowing down the process so I can get to the end result. That's what separates people, because at that point, most people are going to stop. Your body is rejecting food, your body is rejecting water, your body doesn't want you to continue. And you have to mentally switch that off and say, how do I refocus to get to the next checkpoint, basically.
Thanks for sharing both of those key elements. I think discipline is definitely key. And then also, like you said there too, the word that I kind of felt there was being adaptable, right? And also like not letting your ego get in the way, right? Putting your ego aside and listening to your body, right? Being aware, but then also making those changes, right? To adapt so you could set yourself up for success. And those were two good examples, right? Whether it's nutrition or even in the water there, where you now have to breathe on an opposite side because, you have a wave crashing on you. So I appreciate those examples. So Jason, something that I kind of want to transition to next is, it is really clear to me that you deeply value your fitness and have found endurance sports that you actually love to do. It sounds like, even though it is challenging, it sounds like you actually enjoy it, like in terms of the training, like the day-to-day basis. So how can someone inject more purpose into their fitness journey?
Yeah, I would say that if you're wanting to start small, set yourself a goal, whether that's a big goal or a small goal, but um, a lot of it has to do, I find, with mentalization as well. So dream your goals, and then attain them one step at a time. And, like, it doesn't have to be doing an Ironman, or it doesn't have to be, swimming for 48 hours. It could be, hey, I want to just get around the block, or I want to learn how to start by running around the block, or I want to just get myself moving. It's putting yourself that 5 minutes to start a day. And everybody can give themselves 5 minutes, and then making that into 10 minutes and 20 minutes, and getting to the point where you physically are able to, time manage yourself accordingly, that you feel like you can do this, right? Some people have asked me, is it better to train in one block, or in two blocks, or in three blocks, or kind of get it all done? You can go for 15-minute walks, and that's actually an hour, right? Whether you had a newborn kid and you want to push them in the stroller, like, it doesn't have to be meant for speed. If you're trying to work on your fitness goals or fitness journey, I would say start small, and you'll get there just as long as you can physically discipline yourself to just keep going.
Absolutely. I think that's really good advice. It actually reminds me of a best-selling author that I really value his work, James Clear. I've sent him a couple of times on this podcast, but he's all about starting small and, having atomic habits, and also about like the process of becoming, right? It's not always about, setting those goals and checking those boxes. It's about also finding that enjoyment, and becoming whatever you're trying to become, right? So if you're, walking, 4 times a week now, well, you're actually becoming that walker, or if you're running, or if you're cycling, right? So I think you had a really good point there, which is, start small, and don't be afraid, to do activities that you feel like doing, that you actually are going to enjoy. Jason, as you know, I teach college level phys ed at John Abbott here in Montreal. And each semester I get a lot of students. I actually get like hundreds of students. And so it's my goal, as well as my duty, to inspire them to live a healthy, active lifestyle. How could someone sustain an active lifestyle long enough to get the benefits that exercise experts rave about? So like that feeling.
Absolutely. The runner's high, people call
Yes.
it. Yeah, absolutely. I say you can get it in kind of whatever you do, as long as you hit your goals, right? I mean, when I first started, it was, training for anything. I mean, I've been, I guess, a sports athlete for whatever, as long as I could remember. But there was a break where I stopped from water polo until I just decided to do this fitness and to endurance athlete sports. But I would say that, like, how can you find your love and your passion is, you got to figure out exactly what you enjoy, whether that's weightlifting, whether that's a sport, right? And then that, or like sport in anything, soccer, baseball, whatever you want to do, or maybe it's, I want to run, or I want to swim, is whatever you find your passion about. Like you said, is how do you get that high, is by setting yourself like a goal, right? A lot of people that I speak to now, and they ask me, especially on the swimming side, I want to get to, I want to get under a minute for 2 laps of front crawl. That's a big achievement, right? So how do you work yourself around that goal? And then when you hit that goal, what's the next goal, right? So as long as you have something prepared for the next challenge, like it's something small, like I said, 2 laps, but that way you're going to find your passion. You're going to find that runner's high, and going and sign yourself up for an event. I know it's scary, and I know a lot of people are worried about, what people are going to think of them. But the first event I ever did was a half marathon. And like I said, I wasn't a runner by nature, but seeing the people out there and the atmosphere about people cheering you on, that have no idea who you are or what your goals are, but they're excited that you're actually there participating and living your best life, was what people say nowadays, right? So they're encouraging you to be that next person, that person that you want to be, and you'll always find encouragement if you look in the right places, and I think, and surround yourself by the right people. And I think that is how you get that runner's high. You get it by signing up for something scary and just attacking it full force.
That's awesome, Jason. And you know what? I think you mentioned some good points. Obviously choosing things that you love or that you enjoy to do. I think sometimes people will sign up for a gym membership, but they don't actually like going to gym. Like, they don't like being indoors. They're more outdoorsy person, right? So I think like, even if we were to look at you right now, like, you're probably someone that enjoys outdoors. You also enjoy endurance sports, right? Probably like the rhythm, of when you're on a bike, or even of a swim stroke, the feeling of the water, right? These are all elements, which is probably why, even if you don't realize that you enjoy these activities, right? And then also, I think the other thing, which I think was key, was you said about, finding that community, right? Of like-minded individuals, whether that's in your training or whether that's going to these events. And you get another feeling out of that, because it's not just the endorphins, from exercising, but also from these human experiences, right? And I'm sure, like, it's such a great feeling now for you to see this back, in kind of real life, right? Now that COVID is, slowly coming to an end, it's nice. Events are starting up again. And that's probably another incredible feeling, whether you are first or last at this competition. It's just that environment, right? That sense of community. So Jason, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a tough question, Ben. I would say that the main thing would have been to don't sweat the small things. Um, you know, you, and when you're 18, I would say that's a good transition point into, leaving or being into figuring out what you want to do in your life, in your school, as well as some people are transitioning into the workforce, depending on what you're doing. And I would say, don't sweat the small stuff. If you have a feeling for it or for a passion for it, regardless of its, on the athletic side, or let's say it's the business side of things and the schooling side, is, take your chances. It's, don't be afraid to fail. We've all done it. I've failed plenty of times, especially training for these kind of events. But even in my corporate side of work, I would say that I failed as well. But you have to be able to make mistakes, fail, get yourself back up, and don't sweat the small things, because it'll all work out as long as you continue to push forward.
I think that's a simple yet very powerful advice, I think, for people to hear, especially who are young and 18 and kind of eager, to kind of live their best life. We sometimes don't hit our potential if we're not giving ourselves that kind of chance. So if we don't sweat the small stuff, it gives you the opportunity to fail a lot and succeed a lot. And through that process, it's crazy to see what you kind of do, whether it's as an athlete or kind of in a business, everything that you just said. So Jason, as you know, purpose of this podcast is to inspire millions of people to achieve greatness and enhance their overall personal well-being. So what is your definition of greatness?
My definition of greatness would be what my goals and dreams would be set to be. So I would say that it's me in 3 or 4 years from now. My passion is about raising money. So greatness to me is hitting an endeavor to help give something back, right? That's just what I feel is my purpose right now, is what I can do to give people back. So the greatness is defined on what goals you're going to set, right? And what dreams you are. There's a famous speaker, I forget his last name, Les, but he basically said, do you want to be that person who kind of, when you pass away, there's a whole bunch of ghosts standing by the side of your bed, showing you the person that you want to be or that you could have been. So don't lie around, and don't take your chance. Like, don't miss your chance. Don't not take your chances. Don't miss your shots. Find your goal and be the person that you want to be in a couple of years from now, and then go after that. And then when you successfully get to that stage, you're already going to be 2 years again ahead in your mind. So you'll never really hit your full potential, so that you can always push yourself to the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a beautiful definition. And I think from what I understood from your perspective, it has to do with, giving back, leaving that legacy, passing on like the torch. I do think that greatness is not just about the person themselves. It's also about your community, right? And sharing it and passing it on to others. So Jason, who is a future guest that you would like to see on this show?
I would love for you guys to kind of get a hold of someone like Nick Bear, or, obviously one of the guys I look up to are David Goggins, or I would say he goes by Focus Fight Finish on Instagram. This guy has an incredible story, and And I think that his name is Tony Reyes, if his actual name. And I think that he is a great person to follow, especially if you're going to start off your fitness journey. I won't go into too much detail, but he was, 400 and something pounds, and, got himself down. When he had his kid, he realized that he wanted to lose weight and start his fitness journey. And he's done an outstanding job through that process. So I'd love for you to get a chance to chat with him. He also follows me, so we're in contact about what's been going on. And so I'd love for you guys to connect and kind of go through where he's been, that side of the story.
That's definitely three great names. So I appreciate you for volunteering those names there. I will do my best to get one of them on so we could share another, inspiring story and continue to impact people just through each kind of conversation here. So Jason, where is the best place for someone to connect with you online?
Absolutely. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. The more I basically promote through all my stuff through those kind of channels. The link to donate is kind of in my bio, or just kind of send me a message. I use LinkedIn periodically. I don't tend to use it as much just because I work full time. So that's basically for my business side of things. But if you want to follow me and follow on with my journeys and see kind of what challenges I'm going to be doing next, because I always have challenges for the future, then you can find me over there and send me a message, and I'm more than happy to answer in any way I can.
That's awesome, Jason. Yeah. So I'll definitely be sure, to put that in the podcast episode notes so people know where to go. And I want to take this last moment of time, to really thank you for your time today, as well as sharing, your fitness journey and also wisdom and kind of life lessons. So yeah, no, I really appreciate you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. And if I can leave you with a quote that I tend to kind of go by now, that which helps me raise money, is life isn't about you, right? It's about giving back, in my opinion, and helping others so that they can get to their dreams, and whether it be through fundraising and in that sense of things, or if you want to just, for your own self, remember, you have a bigger goal in life, go after that goal and enjoy every part of it.
Thank you for listening to the Living Your Greatness podcast. If this show has added value, please subscribe, leave a rating, and make a review.